in your hotel room, but I want to thank you for that, but I couldn't say yes. Wow, thank you for having me. First of all, I have to tell you, this is incredibly humbling to me to be here. And you know, when you see yourself on the screen and all these great stories, when you have somebody who has accomplished so much more than I have, Ty, sitting here in the room, you guys are part of an amazing story. I mean, the story of SHI is really motivating to me. So it's really humbling for me to be here, and I want to thank you for having me, and I want to thank Dell for having me here. So who here is in sales? All right, that was good. Everybody in the company is a salesperson. I always ask that to our salespeople, right? And our entire company, we get together once a year, and I always say, who here is in sales? And if somebody doesn't raise their hand, I go over and yell at them. Because it's everybody's job to create value and sell the company, whether you're in engineering, whether you're in inside sales. And I understand most of you are inside sales, and I love sales. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm going to talk a little bit about sales, but I'm really going to talk a little bit about purpose, because sales is the best job in the world, and isn't it the hardest job in the world? Think about it. Every day you start knowing that you're going to get rejected more than accepted. Who in their right mind wants to do that? Mom, I got this job, and I'm going to sit in an office, I'm going to call on the phone, and people are going to say no to me 90% of the time. Woo! It's great. So I've been on TV now for about 8 years in the States, and before that about 7 years in Canada. And you know, when you're on TV, what you realize really quickly, because everything on TV is measured, everything. Like, they have people that analyze the way I sit, what color I wear, when I look to the left, what words I use, and they analyze all of that. And what you realize really quickly is that you're a product. You're a widget like any other widget. And they give you all this kind of feedback, and they try to make you better, but at the end of the day, you're a product. And when we film our show, we film here. There's a room where the producers sit, and then there's a really special room where, like, the president of ABC goes, and you know, the executive producer from Sony, and they have free alcohol and food in that room. So one day, a friend of mine who was visiting me on the set got lost, and he didn't go to the guest room. He went to the super special room because it had better booze. So he goes in there, and nobody kicks him out, because the only people in this room are like the president of Sony. And so he just sits down, grabs a scotch, and he's sitting there, and everybody thinks he must be some big shot. So they leave him there. At the end of the day, he comes up to him and he says, "You'll never believe where I was. I was in this really special room, and nobody kicked me out." And I'm like, wow, you got to say, did they talk about me? He goes, "Oh, they talk about you all the time." And I said, "What did they say about me?" And he goes, "Not even your ego could take it." And here's what I've learned after being on TV for 8 years. Everything except one thing can be fixed. There's no such thing as too fat. There's no such thing as too old. There's no such thing as bald, because all of that can be fixed with the magic of surgery and guidance. The one thing that you cannot fix on TV that is absolute death is boring. You cannot fix boring. That is the worst thing anybody can ever say to you when you're on TV, is you're boring. Because usually when they say that to you, the next thing they say to you is, your show's been canceled, or you're fired. And you know, even when we started our company in sales, what I always used to tell our salespeople is, you have to engage a customer. People never remember what you say, they only remember how you made them feel. Think about it. You're going to pick up the phone, you're going to call somebody, you're probably the 30th person that's going to call them that day. They left their house that morning, their dog probably peed on the carpet, their kids yelled at them, they have 1,000 things going on, they don't really want to be at work, their boss yelled at them, their kid got in trouble in school, and then at 10:13 you call them and say, hi. They don't really want to talk to you. And you know what they'll remember after they get off the phone with you about what you said? Nothing. But they'll remember how you made them feel. And so hopefully, if anything I do today is I don't bore you. So I'm Canadian. Are there any Canadians here? Anybody here from Texas? So Canadians are really nice. Anybody here from Canada? All right, that's us. And so I'm Canadian. I live in LA, but you know I'm a Canadian citizen. Our head office is in Canada. And when I used to tell my friends about Canada, this is what they used to think of, right? A Mountie, the majestic Rockies, that kind of stuff. And of course, Canadians love hockey. So if you're anybody in Canada, you have to have a picture with Wayne Gretzky. So this is my picture with Wayne Gretzky. For those of you that don't know, he's a hockey player. I took my wife to the LA Kings game the other day, and we met Wayne. He was standing there, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Wayne Gretzky. And she's like, is he a hockey player? So she's Australian, so it doesn't count. So that's what people think of Canadians. But you know, in the last few years, our Canadian image has really taken a beating. You know why? He's Canadian. Hard to believe, but he's actually Canadian. And here's another, so that's Kevin, Mr. Wonderful. Kevin and I started the show in Canada. And then it was brought to the States. And so Kevin's always been the mean one. And then they started filming the show in Canada, and they needed the nice one, so they brought me in. Then they brought it to the States, and they started filming the show. I wasn't on it, but it wasn't working because Kevin was so mean. People hated him. And they're like, oh, this isn't working. People don't love to hate him. They just hate him. So they said, we have to bring in somebody a little nicer, so they brought me in. But Kevin and I are both Canadian. Here's another crazy thing. We Canadians used to feel all really up ourselves and superior because of your political system. We used to say, oh, you know, a candidate like Trump would never happen in Canada because we're all about the issues and policy and things that matter. Well, guess who's running for Prime Minister of Canada now? Kevin. I have no other comments on that. So the show started, by the way, has anybody watched Shark Tank? Does anybody watch Dancing with the Stars? Okay, different crowd. So the show is owned by Sony, and the way you make a lot of money in TV is you create a format and you sell it around the world. So our show runs in about 45 countries. It was started in Japan 20 years ago, and it was called Golden Dragon. And then they changed the name to Dragon's Den. So everywhere in the world, the show was called Dragon's Den. When Kevin and I did it in Canada, it was called Dragon's Den. It was the highest rated TV show in Canadian history. Sony wanted to hire Mark Burnett to bring it to the States. So they're sitting down with Mark, and they're saying, Mark, here's the format of our show. You have 5 dragons, they have to sit this way, blah, 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 blah. Here's the things you can change, here's the things you can change. The one thing you cannot change is the name, Dragon's Den. Mark looks at the guys from Sony and says, what the hell is a dragon? They're like, you know, dragon. He's like, that's stupid. I'm gonna call it Shark Tank. And he came up with the name just like that. And so it is, I love the name. It is such an American name, isn't it? And it's not just Shark Tank. It's like Shark Tank with a shark eating a seal with blood pouring out of his mouth. That's what our show is, or that's what we try to make it. If you can believe it, when we first started filming in the first season, we were going to use real sharks. So you know when people walk down the hall to come out, those were going to be real sharks swimming in a tank. And what they realized is you can't get the sharks to perform on cue. So then they went with electronic sharks. So the premise of the show, for those of you that haven't seen it, is there's 5 of us, and we are the 5 smartest people in all the land. There is nothing we don't know. We are always right. So one time, this guy comes out, and he's the leader of the Mohican people from some state, and he's got a board game. And if you ever watch our show, board games do not do well. So the guy comes out, makes a pitch, and Kevin's like, "It's stupid! Take it behind the barn and burn it!" And by the way, last year we had 54,000 people apply to be on our show. In the first 2 seasons, we had to beg people to come on the show. So out of 54,000, they bring 230 to LA, and we see about 190 of them. Show's absolutely real. We know nothing about them before they come out. The average pitch in front of us is over an hour. The longest pitch was 2.5 hours. Damon actually got up, went to the cafeteria, had lunch, came back, the guy was still pitching. There's a product called Play Topper. The shortest pitch was 35 minutes. No matter how long or short, it all gets edited into 7 minutes. So, and there's no acting, there's no script. We're the highest bought show on network television. ABC usually buys around 35 episodes. We film in 17 days. So to give you an idea, the average network show is 12 episodes, and it takes 3.5 months to film. We film 8 days in June, 9 in September, never more than 3 days in a row because I have to run a business, and that's it. I show up in the morning, I sit in the chair, people come out, and I go home. And it is real. When people come through that door, they are on. There's no stopping of the camera. Sometimes people come out and about 20 minutes in, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. Can I start again?" They're gone. It's that real. Oftentimes the producers are like, "Oh, I wish Robert would have said this. I wish Barbara wouldn't say that. She's nuts." But you can't change it. So this guy comes out, he's pitching, we don't like it, he doesn't get a deal, and of course, we completely forget about it, because once it's over, there's another one coming through the door. About 1.5 years later, I get hired by the Aboriginal peoples of North America to present the Entrepreneur of the Year award. And I'm late, and as I'm walking up the stage, I'm reading who won Entrepreneur of the Year. It was a guy who invented a board game and had sold more board games than anybody in history. In that time frame, it was the same guy. So I love that story because we really don't know everything. Sometimes a no on our show is just one step closer to yes. But sometimes we really know our stuff. So we sit there 12 hours a day, and as you can tell, I have a hard time sitting still, and I always like to move around. So if there's a chance to pet a dog, kiss a baby, or try something, I'm all over it. So this lady comes out with this ball, and she's moving around, and I'm like, "Wow, that looks like fun. Can I try it?" She's like, "Yeah." So I get in, they zip me up, and I'm like, "Woo!" I'm like, "Wow, it's really hard to breathe." She goes, "I know, it's completely airtight." I'm like, "Oh." And she goes, "And here's another benefit. You can't open it from the inside." I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "Well, here's the idea. You and your friend take it down to the water, you get in, he zips you up, and you float out on the water. It's completely airtight so no water can get in, and you can't open it from the inside so you can't accidentally open it." I'm like, "Oh." Crazy premise. Me and my friend, we go down to the water, he puts me in, I float out in the water, he goes back to the house, has a couple of beers, falls asleep. How do I get out? She's like, "Oh." 2 years $75,000 to get to that point.